My mother-in-law tried to make me eat cake even though I'm allergic to it at her 25th anniversary party. Now she's sorry because of something my husband, Phil, did. I'm 27 years old, and I married my husband, Frank, who is 30, about a year ago. We've been together for 2 years. I've met his family many times, and we used to get along well. But recently, when we were visiting his parents, we started talking about kids. I mentioned casually that I don't want to be a mother. My husband and I have talked about this before, and we both agree that we don't want children. My mother-in-law, Sharon, who is 52 years old, started talking about having kids during dinner that day. When my husband and I said we didn't want kids ever, she tried to change our minds, especially mine. She kept trying for a couple of days until I told her we weren't interested, and neither was my husband. After that, I didn't want to talk about it anymore. I told her clearly, but she didn't seem to like it. She started acting cold and strange towards me whenever I was around. My father-in-law, Ben, who is 53, didn't seem bothered, which made me feel relieved. I talked to Frank about Sharon's behavior, and he said she was just upset and would probably get over it because it's not her decision whether we have kids or not. It made me feel better to discuss it with Frank. Since we still had to visit his parents because Ben wasn't doing well, I decided not to make a big deal out of it. I tried to be polite and friendly with Sharon, even though she wasn't treating me the same way. A few days ago, we went to the 25th wedding anniversary party, which was hosted by Frank's older brother, who is a surgeon. It was a fancy party with lots of guests, including my parents. We were all having fun at the party, even though Sharon was ignoring me. I wasn't too bothered and continued enjoying myself with my husband and parents. Then it was time to cut the cake. I knew I couldn't eat it because it was chocolate peanut butter, and I'm severely allergic to nuts. It was a nutty cake, which seemed fitting for Sharon's personality. She cut the cake with Ben, and we all applauded. It was a nice moment. Everyone got a slice, but I didn't take any because of my allergies. Nobody questioned it because they knew about my allergy. I didn't mind missing out on the cake, but Sharon made a big deal out of it. She came over and asked if I was okay. She even offered me a bite of her slice, despite knowing about my allergy. I politely refused, but she kept insisting. I explained again that I couldn't eat it because of my allergy, but she wouldn't listen. She said it wouldn't hurt to have just a tiny bite, but I didn't want to take the risk. After going back and forth for almost a minute, she suddenly said, "Just try a bite," and shoved the cake into my mouth before I could react. I spat it out right away and had to use a tissue from Frank to get rid of any leftovers. It was gross, and I was still sputtering as I rinsed my mouth while Frank scolded his mother. After about 30 seconds, I calmed down enough to talk to Sharon. I told her off, saying what she did was crazy, and I wasn't coming back because something was seriously wrong with her. I reminded her that just because I didn't want kids didn't give her the right to treat me badly. It didn't matter what she thought about me having children. What mattered was my and Frank's decision. Trying to make me have an allergic reaction just because I didn't want kids was totally crazy. I knew her actions were really about control, and I wanted her to know I wasn't afraid of her. She tried to defend herself, saying she didn't realize my allergies were so serious. That was a complete lie, and she knew it. We'd known each other for almost 3 years, and she'd cooked for me many times. She was well aware of my nut allergy, so her claim of not knowing was absurd. I told her straight out that I didn't believe her and called her a liar. She lost her temper and accused me of lying about my allergies and about my husband not wanting kids. She insisted he wouldn't deny her the joy of being a grandma. She even went as far as to suggest I was faking my allergies for attention and that I might be infertile, which pushed me over the edge. I grabbed some cake from Frank's plate and smashed it in her face, asking her how she liked it. Then I stormed out, not waiting for anyone. Frank, my parents, and I left together. The car ride back home was silent. We dropped my parents off and returned home without speaking for about an hour. I think Frank waited for me to calm down before talking to me. In the evening, he made us some coffee, and we finally sat together in the living room to talk about what happened at the party. I started by saying sorry, even though I knew I wasn't at fault. I felt embarrassed for losing my cool. Frank reassured me that it was okay because he knew I wasn't to blame. He then mentioned that the people who stayed at the party filled him in on what happened after we left. Apparently, Sharon started crying when Frank left with me instead of staying with her. She played the victim, and her family believed her, saying awful things about me and accusing me of trying to separate Frank from her. Surprisingly, Ben, who usually avoids family drama, spoke up this time. He told Sharon that she had no one to blame but herself because she always wanted things her way and couldn't handle it when others didn't agree with her plans. They had a big argument, and everyone felt awkward waiting while they yelled at each other. Sharon blamed Frank for choosing me over her and said he was being unfair, but Ben stood his ground. They kept arguing until Frank's older brother stepped in and stopped them. After that, everyone went home because the day was ruined. One of Frank's cousins recorded the fight, and it was good to see Ben supporting us. She and a few other relatives are on our side. Frank's brother thinks I should apologize because he thinks I overreacted. He believes I shouldn't have brought up personal issues on their anniversary and made it about me and not just Frank. Sharon's family also wants an apology. They say the fight wasn't about us not having kids and that I shouldn't have brought it up. They think I should have just left after the cake incident instead of causing a scene. They blame me for the fight between Ben and Sharon. Frank defended me and said I wouldn't apologize because it wasn't my fault. But they still blame me for ruining the anniversary party and causing the fight between Ben and Sharon. They're not talking now. Sharon left after the fight, and Ben hasn't called her back. So I feel bad for fighting with my mother-in-law on her anniversary because she tried to force-feed me cake. Update 1. Thank you all for your comments. Frank and I appreciate the support and the many people who agree that we're not to blame here. I did feel a bit guilty when I found out that Ben and Sharon weren't talking after their fight. But after reading your comments, I realized it wasn't my fault. It was Sharon's fault. She made her own party all about me, or rather, about her issues with me, which is even worse because it was supposed to be a celebration of her marriage. She deliberately tried to feed me cake she knew I was allergic to, just because I said I didn't want kids. Then she played the victim when things went wrong, as if she wasn't the one causing trouble by trying to trigger my allergy because I didn't want to give her grandchildren. But no one owes her grandkids. She ruined her own party, plain and simple. I don't owe her anything, not even an apology or grandchildren. It's been a few days, and Frank's brother and some other relatives keep texting him with updates on how miserable Sharon is, always hinting that it's our fault. He hasn't responded to any of their messages and is just ignoring them. But he hasn't blocked them either because he thinks Sharon might react strongly, and he wants updates in case things get too intense. Meanwhile, Ben seems fine. We visited him the other day, and he seems unaffected by Sharon leaving. He told us that he hadn't said anything to her for a while, even though he noticed she was getting too controlling. He warned her multiple times, but she never listened. When she started crying at the party, he couldn't take it because he saw through her and knew she was just seeking sympathy after causing trouble. So he called her out and she left. He said he knows she expects him to apologize, but he won't because he's tired of constantly apologizing for speaking his mind. If after 25 years of marriage she can't handle honesty, then maybe they shouldn't be married. Update 2. A few things happened since the last update. Firstly, Sharon contacted Frank, demanding to know why he visited Ben but not her. It seems like the neighbors must have seen us and reported it. Frank explained that since the fight was her fault, he thought his father needed him more, as she seemed more interested in sympathy than resolving things. This offended her, and they argued over the phone. Strangely, she started blaming me for turning Frank against her, as if she wasn't already doing that herself. Despite Frank explaining it was his own decision, she insisted it was my fault. She seems to have a vendetta against me just because I don't want kids, which is absurd. I told Frank I didn't want to talk to her anymore, and he agreed. There's no point in reasoning with her. She's beyond that. The second thing that happened was we went to Ben's house yesterday evening, and for the first time, he offered us drinks. Ben doesn't usually drink because of his health, so we were hesitant, but he insisted. It turns out he talked to a lawyer about getting a divorce. It's a big decision after 25 years of marriage, so we asked if he was sure, but he seemed indifferent and not even upset. Frank was surprised by the news and needed time to absorb it, but Ben assured him it was the right choice. He explained he'd been unhappy for a while, and Sharon was becoming unbearable to be around. When we asked how long he'd been thinking about divorce, we expected him to say a month or two, but he shocked us by saying almost 10 years. He explained that when Frank was 20 and about to finish college, he thought it was a good time for Frank to join his brother in a new business venture. They had discussed it for a while, but Ben couldn't commit due to his family and financial responsibilities. However, after Frank graduated, he was ready to quit his job and start the business. But Sharon thought it was a bad idea and convinced him to back down. She argued that the business might not succeed, and Frank needed a stable job first before taking such a risk. We were really saddened to hear Ben speak like that, so Frank and I decided to talk some sense into him. We kept urging him to reconsider joining his brother in a business venture, emphasizing that it's never too late to pursue one's dreams. It may have sounded cheesy, but eventually, we convinced him to at least reach out to his brother and discuss the opportunity. As for the divorce, we're fully supportive of him. Sharon can't continue to control everyone's lives and expect no consequences. Her treatment of Ben was unfair, and her recent behavior towards us was also unacceptable. She needs to understand that she can't bully people into doing what she wants. It now makes sense why Ben was so upset when she tried to embarrass us at the party just because we didn't obey her demands. Despite everything, she still tries to portray herself as the victim. I no longer pity her because she's shown she doesn't deserve sympathy. Anyone who supports her delusions is either foolish or seeking drama, and that's all there is to it. Update 3. Today, Ben and his lawyer filed the divorce petition, and Frank was there to support them. He said Ben felt a huge sense of relief, and they went out for drinks to celebrate afterward. I couldn't join them because of work, but I'm glad to hear Ben is finally prioritizing his own happiness. At his age, he deserves to live life on his terms, without constantly worrying about his wife's opinion or his son's feelings. This is one of the reasons I didn't want kids. I don't think I could be selfless enough to always put someone else first, and neither does Frank. Then there are people like Sharon, who are selfish yet choose to have children to control them and prioritize themselves. It's been a few days, and we haven't heard from her yet, so maybe she's taking a break from her victim act, or perhaps she's planning a dramatic comeback, knowing her. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the latter. I just hope whatever she's up to doesn't happen before she gets served with the divorce papers. It'll be awkward if she returns and Ben tells her he wants a divorce. Frank and I have discussed the possibility, and we know she'll be upset either way, but it'll be worse if she does it in person. I'm hoping she stays away a little longer. Update 4. So Sharon got served with divorce papers a few days ago, and predictably, she had a meltdown. Surprisingly, though, she didn't direct her anger at Ben. It was aimed at me. I never expected her to involve me in their marital issues, but she went online and made a post claiming that I manipulated Ben into leaving her and that we were all celebrating because I had won and she had lost. I never saw it as a competition, so her perspective is unsettling. She didn't even talk to Frank or Ben before making the post. Instead, she accused me of ruining her life by turning her loved ones against her. It's strange considering she's much older than me and is technically my mother-in-law. She even expressed disappointment in Frank and Ben for supposedly falling for my manipulation and deception. It's bizarre how everything in Sharon's life seems to center around me now, which is honestly pretty creepy. Frank and I have both blocked her, but her relatives keep texting me, calling me evil. It's sad because they think it bothers me, but it actually just makes me chuckle at how foolish they're being. Even if I were some kind of master manipulator, I couldn't force someone to leave their spouse unless they truly wanted to. It seems like they're forgetting that and just want to paint me as the villain. Ben has apologized for their behavior, even though he has no reason to apologize to me. It's all Sharon's doing. But I appreciate his kindness, especially since it's rare in Frank's family. Regardless, the divorce is happening, and blaming me won't change that. The sooner Sharon accepts it, the better for her. Frank and I are happy, so if she's miserable because of that,